space achievement for China. It became the first country ever to put a probe on that far side, or the dark side of the moon.
There is a reason we call it the dark side of the moon, even though it gets plenty of sunlight. It is a place of absolute silence where Earth cannot listen in. A Chinese probe recently braved that silence and brought back something that has turned lunar science upside down.
There was a whole story today about China just landed on the far side of the moon. So they landed a probe over there.
Yeah.
The China-America war on the moon, especially if there's like something on the moon they can mine that's very valuable.
They found a split personality world with a crust so thick it defies logic. But here is the catch. The soil itself is packed with graphene and hidden water. What most people do not realize is that the moon is actually a treasure chest. The material that changes everything forever. The far side of the moon is not actually dark, but it is silent in a way that makes it almost unreachable. Radio waves do not bend around corners, and the moon itself acts as a massive wall of rock. This wall blocks every single signal between Earth and the hidden hemisphere. China had to launch a special relay satellite called the Magpie Bridge years earlier just to talk to their robot. But during the landing, even that bridge could not keep up. The machine had to think for itself. In the control room, screens showed data updating in delayed fragments. The flight director watched the altitude numbers fall from 8 kilometers down to 5, and then 2. Each number arrived seconds after the reality it described. The target was the South Pole Aitken Basin. This is a massive wound stretching over 1,500 miles across the moon. It was punched into the surface more than 4 billion years ago by an impact so violent it nearly cracked the entire world open. Scientists wanted samples from its ancient floor because no human technology had ever touched material from that depth. But that same depth made it one of the most dangerous landing sites ever attempted. Boulders the size of cars littered the approach zone. Slopes steep enough to flip the spacecraft waited in every shadow. The lander used artificial intelligence to scan the surface in real time. It rejected unsafe zones and adjusted its thrust while fuel burned away and gravity pulled harder. Dust thrown up by the engines blinded the sensors. A small bounce could have tipped the lander and ended everything. One mistake was all it would take. But then the signal finally came through. Contact was confirmed, and the legs were stable on the ground. The basin remained silent, but humanity had just touched ground that no one had ever reached before. 53 days later, a return capsule landed in Inner Mongolia with a mystery waiting inside. Dr. Lee was among the first people to examine what came back. He expected to see pale dust like the kind the Apollo astronauts found. He expected it to look like ash from a dead campfire, but what he saw instead was darker. It was noticeably darker. That single observation cracked open a mystery that has puzzled scientists for decades. Hands down, this was the most important moment in modern lunar exploration. What most people do not realize is that the color of the dirt was the first clue to a massive secret. The mystery of the lunar soil was just the first layer of a much deeper story about how the moon was formed. A tale of two ancient fused worlds. If you look at the moon tonight, you will see dark patches called Maria. These are ancient seas of frozen lava that spread across the near side billions of years ago. They formed when molten rock erupted and cooled into smooth plains that reflect less sunlight. But the far side has almost none of these dark plains. It is brighter and rougher. It is covered in craters piled on top of craters with no volcanic floods to soften the view. For years, researchers could describe this contrast, but they could not explain it. The recent samples finally delivered the answer. The moon is not just one world. It is two geological personalities fused into a single body. The near side had more radioactive elements that generated heat in its interior. That heat kept the magma fluid and allowed lava to punch through a thinner crust again and again. This is what painted the dark patterns that humans recognize. The far side was totally different. Its crust grew 20 miles thicker than the other side. Its interior stayed cooler by hundreds of degrees. Lava simply could not break through that thick lid. We are talking about two hemispheres with two different thermal histories. It is one moon carrying a split personality for 4 billion years. This revelation alone would have justified the entire mission. But the soil held secrets that went far deeper than anyone expected. Under the microscope, researchers found structures that should only exist in high-tech laboratories. They found graphene. This is carbon arranged in sheets only 2 to 7 atoms thick. It was wrapped around mineral grains like delicate shells. The same material that costs a fortune to manufacture on Earth was sitting in the lunar dust fully formed. It was just waiting to be discovered. This changes the entire conversation about what the moon actually is. It is not just a rock. It is a source of materials we once thought were impossible to find in nature. The discovery of graphene proves that the moon has its own way of creating things we struggle to make in labs. Hidden oceans inside tiny glass spheres. The moon has no atmosphere and no biological processes. There is no known mechanism that should produce graphene in a dead and airless world. That is, unless you count extreme violence. Every single day, the lunar surface is bombarded by tiny space rocks traveling at tens of thousands of miles per hour. Without air to slow them down, even tiny grains deliver enormous pressure when they strike the rock. In that instant, carbon atoms in the soil are squeezed and superheated. They are forced into new patterns. Then they cool so quickly that the structure locks permanently in place. The moon has been running this experiment for billions of years. It has been building graphene in silence, while humans spent decades trying to do the same thing in expensive clean rooms. This changes everything, because if graphene exists naturally in lunar dust, then the soil becomes a resource worth fighting over. We could use it for spacecraft hulls or protective coatings for habitats. We could even use it for electronics. All of this could be harvested from dirt that astronauts once considered a nuisance. But graphene was not the only impossible thing hiding in that ancient basin. The next discovery pointed to something even more valuable. It was something that should not exist on a world born from fire. More than 4 billion years ago, a massive object the size of Mars slammed into the young Earth. It threw molten debris into orbit, which gathered into a glowing globe of liquid rock. The entire moon was once an ocean of magma hot enough to turn nearby space into a furnace. A moon born from that kind of heat should be bone dry. Every single drop of water should have boiled away in the first million years. But here is the deal. Researchers found water locked inside impact glass beads scattered through the soil. Solar wind hydrogen bonds with oxygen in the glass, and the beads act as tiny sealed reservoirs. Studies estimate this process could store hundreds of trillions of pounds of water across the entire lunar surface. Finding water in a place that was once a ball of fire is a miracle that changes our future in space. The infinite lunar factory in silence. Other scientists discovered minerals that contain over 40% water by weight, and that discovery has sent shockwaves through the entire space community. This was not some simple contamination from handling or leftover spacecraft residue either. We are talking about actual lunar crystals, holding water molecules trapped deep within their atomic structure, acting as tiny vaults for the most precious resource in the universe. This changes everything, Because if water can be extracted from these glass beads and minerals, future crews will not need to haul every single drop from Earth at the cost of thousands of dollars per gallon. It would save an incredible amount of money and effectively turn the moon into a gas station for the rest of the solar system. They will just need heaters, power systems, and sealed chambers to capture the vapor in a vacuum. The barrier shifts from an impossible delivery problem to a simple industrial engineering challenge. Basically, the moon is not just a barren rock to be visited and abandoned anymore. It is a world with massive hidden resources, just waiting to be unlocked by whoever manages to get there and set up shop first. But here is the catch, and this is where things get truly wild. 4 pounds of ancient dust now sit in laboratories, and inside that dust is evidence that the moon might be far more complex than a simple accident of cosmic physics. We found carbon structures born from billions of years of violence and water, hidden where it should have boiled away eons ago. But you have to wonder, how does 40% water content even happen on a rock that was supposedly a ball of liquid fire? Some researchers are starting to whisper about theories that mainstream science is too scared to touch. What most people do not realize is that the distribution of this water and graphene is almost too perfect, as if the moon was intentionally seeded or manufactured with the building blocks of life and industry. There is a growing theory that the moon is not a natural satellite at all, but a hollowed-out megastructure designed to act as a planetary preserve or an emergency resource cache. Think about it for a second. The far side kept these secrets for 4 billion years, hidden behind a literal wall of rock that blocks all communication with Earth. It was patient and silent, almost as if it was waiting for a civilization to reach a specific level of technology before revealing its treasures. If you were an advanced intelligence looking to monitor a developing world like Earth, you would want a base that is close enough to watch, but hidden enough to remain undisturbed. The far side of the moon is the perfect location, hands down. And get this, the crazy part is the sheer density of these materials. If the moon is actually an artificial shell, then the South Pole Aitken Basin might not be an impact crater at all, but a massive entry point, or a scar from a prehistoric mining operation. Some theorists suggest that the graphene we are finding isn't just a byproduct of meteor hits, but the literal remains of a colossal carbon-based computer system, or a hull lining that has been breaking down over millions of years. It sounds like science fiction, but when you find materials that cost a fortune to make in a clean room just lying in the dirt of a dead world, you have to start asking different questions. It's not that simple, though, because if the moon is a factory or a base, who built it and where did they go? Or even worse, are they still inside? Deep within those shadowed craters where the temperature never rises, there are anomalies that suggest the interior of the moon is far less dense than it should be. If we can harvest the water and the graphene, there is no limit to how far we can go, but we might be stepping into a house that already has an owner. The thing is, we are just scratching the surface of what this world has to offer, and what we find a few miles deeper might be even more terrifying than graphene in the dirt. Imagine drilling for water and hitting a metallic bulkhead or a power source that is still humming after 4 billion years. That is the kind of reality NASA is likely worried about behind closed doors. We are looking at a future where the moon is the starting point for the rest of the solar system. But it could also be the place where we realize we were never alone in this corner of space. The moon has been a silent witness to our entire evolution. And now that we are finally knocking on the door, we might not like who answers. Every new gram of soil tells a story of a world with a split personality, a moon that shouldn't exist according to the laws of physics as we knew them. The question is no longer just about survival or mining. It is about the true nature of our closest neighbor. What if the moon is actually a dormant base, waiting for us to trigger its most dangerous secrets? Do you think the moon is a natural satellite? or something more? Like and subscribe for more mysteries.